want to know what uncensored is, uncensored's my way of showing people that even with a learning disability, I can still overcome obstacles and obstacles that are thrown in my way, and at the same time I'm capable of turning myself into a perfect example for people out there dealing with any type of learning disabilities or disabilities in general, that you should never give up or have people label you, and you should prove to them you can still amount to something. And it's an honor and a privilege to have you on my talk show.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you can hear me pretty good, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is my first video interview, so I'm always doing audio. So, but yeah, I think what you're doing is great. Especially with your handicap and everything. There are, where I do my radio show, there are a few people, but they're in a wheelchair, so I don't know. And I see them come in once in a while, but on the days that I do my show on a Sunday night at 7 o'clock LA time, usually some of the people are either guests or co-hosts. They come in every so often, So, but yeah, it's radio is a great venue for a lot of people who are handicapped to get out there and say, their views, their political views or whatever, and let the people know that, what the disability is and how they overcome it. It's better than just sitting around and moping,
Yeah, that's true. We know it's on social media, with especially YouTube, where you can actually do your own show for free. You can just basically introduce yourself, and a lot of people say, and it's uncensored, a lot of people say Dutch bitch and see who wants to listen to you.
Right. Yeah, I try to keep my show clean, so because there's a couple guys that they like my show, they like my opening, and they'll play it on terrestrial radio. The less I do of that, the less editing they have to do.
Right.
So I'm trying to make everything simple for everybody.
Well, I know it's, on the subject of uncensored. Uncensored is freedom of speech, freedom of self-expression, and you can say whatever you want. A lot of people, I got into a fight with someone. He was a former professional wrestler. A year and a half ago, I introduced myself to him, told him about my show, and I told him, uncensored, told him what's about, I think you're doing a great thing. A year later, so I was trying to get a follow-up with him, because we were playing phone tag. And, hang on for 1 second, sorry. I actually knocked the camera out of my hands. And now and he's like, okay, I remember you, what can you tell us about your show, yada yada. And as soon as I said uncensored, hey, I'm gonna cut you off right there. Yeah, it was great. I liked all your information until you said uncensored. Or you gotta use the F word. It depends, maybe. If it comes up or if I'm very passionate about something. Or I might not use it at all. So it's sometimes I'm not gonna be like F. I'm not that type of show. But if a normal conversation, if you're gonna express yourself, okay. And he said to me, well, I don't like uncensored. I'm a born-again Christian. Okay, that's really not a problem. So, what's the problem? I don't want to be on your show and then next episode you gotta have someone going on a big racist rant or someone using the F word. I don't want to be in that boat. And I was like, okay, well, how about this? How about we do... And then this is where I got pissed off. Because I was first I was professional. And I said, okay, how about we do it off the record? Just between you and me, just between friends, off the record, and I'm extending my hand to you in friendship. And he basically slapped it back and says, I want nothing to do with you or your type of show. And it's kind of like, okay, I tried it professionally, now I'm trying it personally, and you're slapping it back in my face, and it's kind of like, I don't deal with people like that.
Yeah.
But
Well, and in this business, you meet a lot of people with a lot of idiosyncrasies. I just, when I bring my guest on, I always tell them, there's no swearing on my show, and I keep it, because I tell them, just make believe you're on terrestrial radio, regular radio, with the FCC rules. Right now, the internet radio is like the Wild West. So,
right.
Without a sheriff in town, you can say anything, do anything, you can project anything, But that's up to the individual host. Some people at LATalkRadio.com, where I work, he's got about 80 hosts, and just about every topic under the sun is being discussed. So, they had people from, there was a couple of shows there when I first started out, because I started in January of 2011, and I did about 65 shows, and then my wife got sick, and I took a year off, and then one of the hosts, because I was writing about what was going on with my wife on Facebook, and I was getting a lot of responses, and one of the hosts said, Jack, why don't you come on the show, and we'll interview you and my wife Louise. So I asked her, I said, you want to go on the show? And she said, yeah, but for 65 shows, she wouldn't come on my show.
Right.
She would come on if let's say I had a call-in guest, so, her and I would go out for supper, because there was a Chinese restaurant downstairs next door to the studio. So we'd go grab something to eat, and then I'd go up and do the show. She'd sit inside the studio with me, and and I would shut her mic off so she wouldn't talk. So when she said yes, I was like, wow. So we went on, and she was telling her about, because she had a brain injury, so memory loss and stuff, and her coordination's everything's different on her. So she's permanently disabled now. So. But she handled it really good, and then so the station manager contacted me, and they never sold my time while this was going on. So over a year, maybe a year and a couple of months, they would replay one of the 65 shows. So so they would just pick the show and play it, And then so they called me back and they said, Jeff, we want you back on the air, so it was very nice of them. So I've been back there 2 years, last month. I've been back. So I have a very unique opening in my show, which everybody seems to love. I get great compliments from everybody that comes on the show, because most people, when I go on a show, sometimes, especially when I was doing Blog Talk Radio, I used to, if I was going to go on somebody's show, I'd go to their show a few days before, listen to it, and see what the whole thing was about, and just to get a little comfortable,
Right.
And so I used to do that with the LA Talk Radio crowd, So, but most people that come on my show, they just come in cold turkey, so they never hear the opening. So when they're sitting there listening to it, and they just, and I introduce them, they just go crazy with the opening.
Well, do you have a perfect example where we can listen to?
Yeah, I can. This is one of my vignettes that I write. Hopefully, I found myself driving at night here in the City of Angels. The rain had given everything a wet, slick look, like plastic coverings on your ground on the sofa. The headlights of the oncoming cars gave off halos as if everything was in a soft focus. I was heading out of town to pick up my usual supply of Cuban cigars at La Habana. I had gotten a phone call earlier from my Cuban contact in Vancouver that my shipment would be at the usual place. I pulled off the highway into this dirt road, heading towards this run-down motel that was a cross between a flea bag and a dive, a place I felt I would end up in one day, alone and broke. As I got out of my car, there was a desert wind blowing, one of those hot, dry Santa Anas that come down to the mountain passes, curls your hair and makes your nerves jump, and your skin itch. I was walking towards the motel when a young girl walked up by me. She was cute, cuter than lace pants. She had a set of curved Noah curves. She gave me a look I could feel in my hip pocket. She looked like an artist, majoring in men. She probably got all A's too, but never on her report card. However, she did smell the way the Taj Mahal looked in the moonlight. But for now, I had to pick up my Cubans and head back to LA to do my radio show. I could now smoke fresh Habanos and do my part to the fall of Castro, and long for the days to smoke cigars in a free Havana. So I put these together, in between, because my commercials, I do my own commercials, and I don't really have, I don't have paying sponsors, but I've got two guys, one guy made me a hat, a fedora, custom-made hat, very expensive, and about a year and a half ago. So I do my own commercial about his company with the phone number, and then another guy started a company called Zakati. The hat guy he's a hatter, so he makes all kinds of hats. It's called Vintage Silhouettes. So people can go to the site vintagesilhouettes.com. His name is Art Fawcett, and you can see all the hats he makes. Men's, women's, So they're like $500-600. Some of them are much more, depending on the material. So he liked me. Joe, and he made me a hat because I was looking to get a replica of Robin Mitchum's hat from Farewell My Lovely.
Right.
Because my show is, kind of that mood. So now I got the speakers going. Let me go back to the show, and I can play my opening from the actual last week's show. So.
Well, after the show, I do have a couple of ideas for you.
Okay.
Well, on the subject.
Let me get this here up. Okay. This is how I open the show. This is
irreverent, entertaining, cool, and you're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Jack Marino, Warrior Filmmaker, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Marino, ladies and gentlemen, you're a host of the Warrior Filmmaker Show on LATalkRadio.com, here in the heart of Hollywood. I'm broadcasting to you tonight live somewhere on Mulholland Drive, high in the darkened Hollywood Hills, and not too far from that famous Hollywood sign. Sitting in my smoke-filled, dimly lit studio, I can see through the Venetians the vast expanse of the City of Angels, with its millions upon millions of lights twinkling in the night sky. And make no mistake, each one of those lights comes with its very own story. In the dark canyon far below the studio is the former estate of legendary movie actor Errol Flynn, who came out of nowhere to become the biggest star in the world. He was a man whose real skill was in the art of living. So pull up your favorite chair, light up a smoke, pour yourself a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Learn the truth of independent filmmaking, and because of the politics of Hollywood, one is treated like a fly buzzing around on a screen door on those hot summer nights. Listen to my guests when they tell their stories of when the world was young, when they drank life like wine and lived like the wind. Hear about those wild nights at the Garden of Allah, of the Bundy Drive boys and their wicked, wicked ways, of the studios, the moguls, the agents, directors, producers, actors. So So take a trip with me now back in time to the golden era of Hollywood, where men were men and women were glamorous. A time when style meant class, and doing the right thing was a way of life, and virtue was its own reward. For this is Hollywood. This is the only place in the world that has the stuff where dreams are made of. Well, this is Jack Marino, and welcome to the show, and we're back here. So that's basically how I started off, you know.
Well, first off, that was really great. And second of all, you have a great voice, so why don't you do audiobooks?
Well, thanks. That's what they tell me. You know, I hear a nasal kid from Boston, so, you know. Let me see. Let me minimize this page. Okay, there you are. All right. And, you know, when I first got hired on the show, what I was doing was, you know, I had produced a film back in '88 called Forgotten Heroes. The poster's up here. I can show you the poster. You can see I can't zoom it in, but you see the guy with the red beret?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the poster to my movie. And what had happened was, it's a Vietnam picture, and I produced it with my friend, my partner John Liebert, who he raised most of the money, you know, and I had put it together. And raising money in Hollywood as an independent filmmaker is like impossible, you know. And I had walked out of the movie Platoon in '85 or '86 or something.
So you were saying before you were rotary cut off about your movie back in 1988, The Red Beret?
Yeah, the movie, I wrote the thing called Forgotten Heroes, and I wanted to, because I watched Platoon and I hated, I mean, it was a great war movie, but it was the typical Hollywood leftist, you know, the Vietnam guys, drug addicts, baby killers, burning villages, and this stuff happened every day. And this is the whole agenda of the left in Hollywood, to portray the American soldier completely opposite of how we portrayed them in World War II and Korea.
Right.
Because the Hollywood left has a vendetta against the Vietnam War, because most of them didn't want to go, so they were draft dodgers. And, you know, in that generation, I mean, I know so many Vietnam vets, and they're a hell of a bunch of guys, you know, and they fought in that, you know, that meat grinder, which was unlike World War II in Korea, and they did a hell of a job. You know, we won every military engagement, even the Tet Offensive, when Walter Cronkite said this war is unwinnable. He should have been fired from CBS. But because, you know, the country didn't go after these liberals, you know, they just basically ran rampant in the narrative. They took over Hollywood. They control the narrative, motion picture, TV, the pop culture. So now they can basically say anything they want, you know. And the only way to counteract that is through movies that tell another perspective, you know. So the idea of me being an unknown filmmaker, because I had 2 films under my belt by '88, and both were in profit. And so that was a major key for me, you know. But still, I happened to meet this guy, John Liebert, and he didn't know me from Adam. And he was a Navy veteran. And I met him through a friend. It was a fluke, because this friend of mine was one of the writers of the script, and he worked for Junior Achievement. And he used to make phone calls to people like John and other businessmen to donate so much every year. And John's name was on a list. He just goes down the list, and, you know, they call people up and you say, you know, you donated last year, could you donate this year, and stuff like that. So John being from New York and my friend Bud being from New York, you know, they picked up each other's accent. They started, you know, basically kibitzing with each other, you know. And so Bud, the writer, said, you know, Mr. Liebert, he said, do you ever raise money for films? And he says, well, I've been approached, but I just mainly with real estate. You know, I do real estate investments. He puts partnerships together to buy, let's say, a 16-unit building or a 20-unit building, you know. and then they go in there, they own it for a few years, you know, and they basically sell it, they fix it up, and then move on to another deal, you know. So John, Bud told him, he said, well, I know a guy that's made a movie for $100,000 and it was distributed, it's made a lot of money, and John says, no way, there's no way anybody can make a feature film for $100,000. He said, I want to meet this guy, you know. So Bud told me about it, gave me the phone number. Now, in those days, I was getting a lot of phone numbers. I should just take that number and throw it in my desk drawer with all the others, you know. So something just kept bugging me just about what he said, that the guy wanted to meet me. So I called him up, and John and I hit it right off because I have a Boston accent, and he just knew. So, you know, that whole New York-Boston rivalry, right away he started with me with the Boston Red Sox and everything else. So, you know, and John's the type of guy, you know, he's when you meet him, he treats you like he's known you for 30 years. So he said, well, what do you got? I want to see what you got. So I went down there, I met him, gave him the script. He said, let me read the script and I'll call you. So, and I gave him a copy of my first film, which he hated. You know, so, but he was very impressed with what I did, and he was impressed with the figures that money in, money out, and how I paid everybody back. And so that really impressed him. So I think I met him around September. You know, I don't, it's so long ago. But it was around the same time that, because what had happened, my partners on my first film, we split up, and it took me about a year and a half to clean that corporation up and get them out so they can never come back and do anything with the movie. So now here I am all alone. And how do I make a movie, you know? So, and I had no money, really, to speak of, you know. Even though the film was making money, I wasn't getting it. You know, like 6 distributors were taking a piece off the top, you know. So it's like dividing a pizza, and you get like half of a slice, you know. And then I got to divide that little half a slice 18 ways, okay. So I told a friend of mine, I said, you know, I got to find an attorney that will put a partnership together for free. Unlimited access to him, unlimited letters, unlimited phone calls, everything for free. And everyone says, you're out of your mind. Lawyers don't do anything for free, even for their own mothers. I said, doesn't matter what they don't do. I said, I'm telling you what I need, and I have no choice, or we never making a movie again. That's it. There's no other way to do it. So I opened up the LA telephone book, and I went down entertainment attorneys. And I told them my spiel, and the guy, they said, well, I can't help you, but I know a guy that may help you. So he gave me a name. So now I was off the phone book because every guy I got referred me to a friend of theirs. So I meet a guy whose name is Michael, and I started dropping names of people I knew. And he says, I know this guy, I know him. He says, Jack, he says, you know, let me check you out, and I'll get back to you. I said, all right. So he called me back about a half hour, 45 minutes later, and he said, how fast can you get my office? And I said, well, I'm here in Burbank. I can get down, down. He was in Century City, so he's a high-powered attorney in Century City. Well, the deal was that he accepted my terms, okay, and I would pay him once the money was in the budget, you know. If the money wasn't completely raised and I started shooting the budget, he would get paid after the film was sold. Okay, but between now and that time period, he was not to see a dime, and I could call him up night or day, and he put together a limited partnership, which in those days was about $30,000, just to put the paperwork. And most of the stuff's all boilerplate. They just pull it out of the file. They my name in.
Sorry about that.
So you know, so he said, "Look, Jack, I'll do everything you want." He says, "But you got to do me one thing." I said, "What's that?" He says, "Teach me how to make movies." So I said, "Great, that's no problem." So, so I gave him a lot of my contacts. I said, Michael, if you're on the set, at 3 o'clock in the morning, call me. Anything you need, I'll tell you. So I started basically, he'd be calling me up all the time. We talked to him. We became very good friends, Nice guy. So he wanted to make a film, but he was more or less doing, like in those days in the 80s at the AFM, he did a movie called Rich Girl, and but mostly, like a guy from a band on the road meets a sexy girl. They get together and something happens to them. So he's doing like these little well, I don't want to say teenage love stories, but that was a genre in those days. Now, when I first got into making films, nobody had done a low-budget Rambo action movie in the jungle. And my partners and I were the first ones, and it went through the roof. So by the time I was doing Forgotten Heroes in '86, that kind of permeated over the whole AFM, low-budget action in the jungle movies, But Michael was still doing these road pictures, about a band guy, and he owed money to the mob or something crazy thing, So the thing with Michael was, he would crank out these films for like $500,000. He'd raise the money, And so by the time I finished Forgotten Heroes, he had done, I think he was on his 5th film. He had done 5 movies. So the 5th film, him and I were negotiating together with this one distributor. And they were former executives of Orion Pictures. And they wanted to take my movie out, Forgotten Heroes, 1,000 prints. So, but it was, it was very unique. I mean, I guess I can actually say I'm the only guy in Hollywood that got not one attorney. Eventually, I got 2 attorneys to work for me for nothing. So I've been very blessed. And what happened was, when I met John Liebert, I told him about my deal with Michael, and he said, well, as long as he doesn't interfere with what we're doing, I'll honor your deal, more or less. So, John ended up getting Michael's package, which was basically a standard legal proposal. John writes limited partnerships like people write letters. So he'll sit there, and he was going to design a deal that was so specific for his clients who he knew and the people I brought in. And so it would be, it would just be made for us. It wouldn't be a standard deal. So when we needed Michael to read it and him to put a legal letter in the partnership so we could file it with the state of California. Michael said it was one of the best partnerships he's ever read. John and I today are convinced he's using that as a boilerplate. But again, it was, I know so many guys, Andrew, that have college degrees, graduate film school degree, can't raise $5 for a sandwich, let alone a movie. I've been very, very blessed, very lucky, I never went to school for filmmaking. I'm a criminal justice major out of Northeastern in Boston. I got into acting. I came out here, wanted to be an actor. That's all I wanted to do was act, And, but my wife and I came out here. We started having kids, and someone has to stay home and watch the kids. So that was my job. So I stayed home, and my wife was working, and then I was working in post-production, so sometimes I would work 3 to 11, or I mostly worked from, my wife would get home about 5 or 6 o'clock. I would get work from 6 o'clock to 2, or get on the 11 to 7 shift. So when she was getting ready to go to work, I was coming in, So there was one of us at home with the kid, because in those days, her and I never wanted to put our kids in daycare. I mean, if you're going to put your kids in daycare, don't have kids.
Right.
So, so I always figured that, if I get an acting job here and an acting job there, and get on a show, then that will take care of the problem, financially. But we kept our overhead low, and we did okay with it, So I got into writing, and then I got into raising money. I raised the first film for Killzone. Basically, my dad put up the first $1,000 for Killzone. And I always said that $1,000 launched 1,000 films because after Killzone was released, everybody in Hollywood at the low-end video market was making Killzone-type movies. You know, even if it wasn't about Vietnam exercise, what Killzone was, it was in the jungle. It was drug dealers, you know, or white slavers, but it was the same concept.
Right.
So they just used my concept for Killzone, and they made a boilerplate. Now, my ex-partners and I, we split up at the end of '85. They went on to make about 80 movies of that genre, and he's still doing them. So, but I didn't want to go down that road, because so once you get in that level, you never get out, you know. So, but it's a living. I mean, a lot of people make a living at it, you know. But to me, the kind of money and the effort and energy, you know, you just go get yourself a job working in the middle management, and you know, they have less stress, you know. I mean, you come out here to make movies. You come out here to basically go for that $100 million brass ring and end up, you know, like Coppola and those type of guys, you know. And you make it, you know, because the time and effort and anxiety and everything, you know, that's the only way it pays off, you know. But again, 99% of the people that come out here never make it. You know, some make a living, you know. So I was very fortunate to meet John, and when he committed to raising the money, I mean, money started coming in, you know. And so, I mean, it took me about a year or so from meeting John to actually opening up my first production office. Because the first two films I worked out of my house. I made films out of my house. So I actually had a real office and editing rooms, everything. We bought equipment. We started buying things, you know. So, we were on a roll, you know. And so then I did all the pre-production myself because I didn't really have enough money to hire people. It wasn't toward the 2 weeks before the shoot that I hired a young kid from Columbia University, you know. He got all his friends on the shoot, which was one mistake I made. And but I had some professionals, really motion picture professionals in the top jobs, you know. So I made a deal with the location people up in Newhall Ranch, where you would know where it is, but people that are watching this may know California is where Magic Mountain is. They used to shoot a lot of movies up there, you know. And I was they had shot Vietnam, HBO Vietnam War Stories, and they shot 84 Charlie Mopak. And I was the next production, independent Vietnam film to go there. And I was really the last independent to shoot in that area because Tour of Duty was coming in, and they wanted to get me out. They wanted to get me out of that location. But I had signed the contract. So they offered me if I would flip my shooting schedule, change my shooting schedule, so I can shoot my night stuff first and my day stuff in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so Tour of Duty could build the sets, because they were on a time crunch. So being a nice guy, I figured, okay, you know, they gave me the location for free. What I should have done, I should have said, okay, again, not ever working at this level, I should have, okay, they pay for the firemen and the police overtime and everything. That's where they got me, you know. I had to pay for all that stuff. But but I did get the location for free.
Right.
But I had to pay for they have a fire truck on every day, which I forget, you know, who knows what that was. I think it ended up costing me almost $10,000 just to have the fire truck there, you know. And then I had to have police there, you know. So if that ever happened to me again, I'd say they pay for everything. Anybody from the city comes on this lot, they pay for it. I don't pay for nothing. But you live and learn. It's a learning curve, you know. So I managed to get up there. We shot for 6 weeks. It's all unknown actors. I got William Smith in the movie, who played Falcon Eddie, and he played every heavy in. He's the greatest heavy in Hollywood pictures from the '60s on. But in this movie, I went against type, and he plays a good guy. plays a Russian who's got a heart. So, and Bill loved that. I learned a lot from Bill. You know, he always said that if anybody, because I wrote the script with him in mind, he said no one's ever written a screenplay with me in mind. Because when you read the character, you can see Bill's personality. So, because I was very meticulous, because I wanted to give him the script so he reads it, he sees himself in it, and he says, I'll do the role. I didn't want to negotiate with an agent. So he called me up and he says, Jack, I'll do the role for free. I said, no, I said, we'll pay you. I said, I get the money. And so his agent called me up and he says, you know, we got to pay, you know, Bill's so excited about the project, you know, so we worked out an agreeable day rate, and Bill was a charm. He was great. You know, we had a lot of fun. And people can go to my website at ForgottenHeroesTheMovie.com. So it's ForgottenHeroesTheMovie.com. They can order the DVD. They hit the PayPal button. I got trailers up there. I got lots of reviews. I even got a letter from President Bush, who saw the movie. I managed to get him a DVD in 2006. You know, so you know, like I said, I know people that are raising money for films. I mean, they're still raising it for 10 years later. They still haven't gotten the money. You know, and I've been very, very blessed. From 1984, I raised money for Killzone, and then I did a small little film for my director of photography on Killzone. I put that whole movie in the can on a credit card from a friend of mine. I didn't have the money at the time. So I convinced this friend of mine, a young kid, and I said, look, I'll give you your money back, you know. So, and I did. I paid him back, you know, even though the people I was working with, they all reneged on it. They weren't going to pay. And I said, no, you don't understand. Because I had a contract with them to get me out of the picture, which eventually I left.
Right.
Because they put one of the guys who came in with some completion money for the post, wanted to put some nude scenes in there. This is a Western. He wanted to put the F word in there and everything. I said, this is a Western. It's a Western thriller, you know. And that was a concept of mine. And, you know, the other guy that wrote it, you know, he took all the credit, which I didn't really care too much about, you know, because I was more concerned about getting another producing credit and getting something made and getting it out there right away, you know. So we banged this thing together in 3 weeks. Everybody worked for free, you know. I got it in the can for like $3,000, you know, which is unheard of at the time. And I think Rodriguez did a movie a couple years later, you know, I think 10,000. They raved about it, you know. He's a genius, you know. I mean, I put this thing together for 3,000. I think I had about $1 left over. I came in on the budget for $1. You know? So, you know. But it was a fun shoot, and we got it. And this guy came in with the post. He was going to put about 20,000, but they didn't really finish the post. They went with that money to Milan, and they lived like, you know, you think they were Daryl Zanuck and his wife over there, and they spent the money. So they never made, because the guy that put the money says, well, don't take anything under $100,000 per territory. And I told the guy, I said, look, you don't understand. This movie will never generate $100,000 if we sold every country. I said, look, you go to England, and you know, if they're paying $5,000 for a territory in England, take it for $2,000. Take it for half, because it's cash. We only get $3,000 in this movie. You sell 3-4 territories, we're already in profit. Okay? We can sell. Let's say we sell Germany, Scandinavia, Norway, and we come back from Milan with $15,000. We've got the money to do the post, clean it up, and we still put money in our pocket. The movie basically is paid off, and everything that we make sales from then is gravy. Because now we can go to the U.S. video guy, and we could sell the U.S. video and everything else, you know, and pick up another $50,000 or something like that, you know. But, you know, there's a sickness in this town, especially with people who've never made a movie. you know, they see their name on a movie and a credit, and they just lose their minds. They figure, I'm a millionaire. I'm Francis Coppola. I'm, you know, Mel Gibson.
Right.
You know, and they go in there cocky, and they blow the deal. So then everybody that sees the movie has an opinion. You know, where are the naked girls? You got girls in here. You know. So the guy that was put the money came back. He says, "We got to put a naked girl in the opening." I said, "Yeah, not in my movie." You know. So they bought me out. They had to buy me out, and they didn't want to pay my guy. I said, "No, you don't understand. This film's not going anywhere until you pay off the investor, because Jeff. If it wasn't for Jeff, we wouldn't have this film, because none of you guys would put up any money." You know. So I got the money from Jeff. I got some profit. Technically, I was the only one. Jeff and I were the only two guys that get paid on that whole movie, and that's '87. The movie still hasn't been, and there's been 3 or 4 owners on it, and no one's made money on it. It's because they didn't finish the film. They started shooting the film, and the lead actor had short hair, and then when they went back to do some pickups, he had long hair, and he wouldn't cut it. So so in the movie, I mean, it's like a mishmash, you know. So thank God I got my name off it. So it was around that time, this is where I met my partner John, and we got the funding. So I mean, you know, between '84 and '88, I got funded on 3 films basically, which is unheard of. So, and Forgotten Heroes looks like a major studio made the film. So, and we ended up even going to Czechoslovakia to score the movie. I mean, I have a huge score with a live orchestra, the Czechoslovakian orchestra there. That's all they do. I mean, that's their life. That's not their job. That's their life. You know, they practice all day long, you know, and they play for the state, because at that time, when we had gone over to Czechoslovakia, the Soviet Union had just collapsed, and Pavel was just elected president of Czechoslovakia. He had only been in office for 30 days, and then I fly in to Czechoslovakia. So there were Soviet troops everywhere around the place, but they had no authority. They couldn't do nothing. They were just basically there as a presence. So when we flew into Prague, the composer and I, were in this old prop plane that was turned into a jet. They took the prop engines off and put a jet. They had circle windows with curtains in them. So I don't know if it was like an old Gulfstream jet, Learjet, or it was a commercial jet. I have no idea. You know. So we flew out of Frankfurt into Prague, which was about an hour and a half, I think, flight, 2 hours maybe. It was the most uncomfortable flight. The stewardess had to be 400 pounds. She couldn't even walk up the aisle, and it was like, you know, and the place just smelt of salami. I'm sitting there going, oh my God! And then, you know, and we're 2 big guys, and the chairs were meant for people from probably in the 40s. Who knows? I mean, it was just didn't fit. Nothing fit. So we land at Prague, Czechoslovakia, and this army truck pulls up, and about 30 guys get out with the square hats, with the machine guns. They circle the plane. I said, whoa. What do we get ourselves into here? You know, because I'm looking out the window, and there's like all these Soviet troops. And it looks like the movie The Spy That Came Out of the Cold. I said, we're not going home, you know. We're dead. So they march us off into this area, and it's a big iron cage. It looks like a slaughterhouse. You know, when you walk in, they put the animal in, they zap them, and then the doors open up. That's what they did to each human being. They walk us in, close the gates behind us. And I had to show a guy my passport. All I saw was his nose, his chin down. The light was on, bright lights on me. They stamped the thing, and then they tell me to go. And they open up the metal gate, and I walk through. Once I went through the doorway, then it was like, you know, I was escaped from a gulag, you know. So The girl that we hired, the Czechoslovakian liaison girl, she was there. She was a sweetheart, and so she took us all around. We went to the hotel we were staying, and again in those days, you know, they were paying 5-to-1 on the Czechoslovakian crown, so they give you 5 crowns to $1 American dollar. So everybody was exchanging money in closets, cab drivers, you know. They'd give us, Russian caviar. I was eating caviar for like 4 days or now. I mean, this is stuff that, you know, you pick up for a couple of bucks, you know. So we went and we scored the film. I think we had two scoring sessions. We were there for about a week, maybe 5 days, you know. It took a couple of days to prep everything, then 2 days of scoring, and then we had to get the masters cleared, and then, you know, Will and I used to go around at night looking at Prague. It's a beautiful city. I mean, if anybody ever goes to Czechoslovakia, I mean, you're actually walking down the streets where Mozart walked, and you're actually going in the buildings where Mozart went in. So, because that part of old city Prague was never bombed. I mean, Hitler never bombed Prague, you know. But the SS there, especially in the Jewish section, you could see bullet holes in the wall where they executed people. So, and especially there's a famous church, and the Nazis would use this one wall against this church, and they just would machine gun people. You know, they just take you out there against the wall and shoot you, you know. So, and then the girl I was there with, her grandmother survived World War II, so she told me a lot of stories about World War II, you know. And it was pretty interesting. And one day I was on the St. Charles Bridge, and I met 2 Russian soldiers from Afghanistan. There were 2 guys in the tank. I mean, they recognized me as an American right away, and they gave me a hug, and they, you know, kissing me and everything. We're talking. And it was about 4 o'clock. I didn't get home from them till like 6 in the morning. And we drank all night. They had bottles of Russian schnapps. They gave me a watch. They gave me this. I gave them a couple of bucks. They didn't want the money, you know. They wanted me to take them to America. Yeah. And 2 young guys, sure, they were great. We had more laughs. And they, you know, they were taking me at 3 o'clock in the morning. We were walking around Prague. I don't know where I was. I mean, they could have stabbed me and left me on the ground there, you know. But it was an experience, and we scored the film. I finally got out. I had to smuggle the masters out, the DAT masters out, because they wanted to keep the masters. So what they did was they gave me the masters, made a copy, labeled them as the masters, gave it to me, and I had to carry them. I put them in my socks. I had another backup, basically, you know, taped to my thigh, you know, and because they just, you know, but we paid for them, you know. That was we needed the DAT masters, the first generation. So when I was ready to get on the plane, they took me in a room with this Soviet woman. You know, a typical stereotype when you see a Soviet woman soldier in the brown outfit, you know. And I mean, I had to take my shirt off. They patted me down, you know. I'm figuring they're gonna grab my stuff. They went through my suitcase. They found nothing. I mean, I hit it pretty good, you know. But I was sweating bullets there. So they let me out, and then, you know, I got on the plane. I figured that'd be great, you know. And then we landed in Frankfurt, and I was the engine had trouble. When, it was going to go on from Frankfurt to Los Angeles. We sat in that plane for 8 hours. They didn't even take us off. They were working on the engine. But I had the music score on a cassette. I had them transferred to me on a cassette. So I'm sitting there on a little Walkman, and I'm playing my score over and over. For 8 hours, that's all I did. So to me, it was like, you know, I was only waiting on the Town March for about an hour. Because I would listen to the music and I was trying to figure out, and I had a list of where it was going to go in the movie. So I'm thinking and everything. So, you know, I know Will was going crazy, you know. So, but I had he was falling asleep, but I had the headphones on and I was just listening to this beautiful, beautiful music, you know. And so we got back and we put it in the movie, and because it took me 2 years to do the post-production, you know. And so by 1990, the film was done. I was 35 at the time, and I started taking it around to Warner Brothers, and I started taking it to all the major studios. So from 1990 to 91, 92, I had over 350 screenings in Hollywood. Now, a lot of them they paid for, some we paid for. We would hire a screening room, and we would invite about 100 people, and like say 60 show up, you know, film buyers, foreign buyers, distributors. But you know, Disney saw my film 10 times, and Warner's I think about 7 times. Most of them were between 6 to 8 times. The 20th Century Fox, Paramount Pictures, because I would always come up with a selling angle. John and I would put together a package. I mean, I even got a call from an executive from MGM. He says, you know, apparently you must have seen everything we sent them, you know. And he says, you guys put together the best proposals he's ever read, you know. But, you know, I mean, I found that the people in distribution and acquisitions are very conservative, and but it's the senior presidents. The higher up you go, the more liberal it gets, until you get to the Jerry Katzenbergs and Michael Eisners, and those are the guys that make the decision. They've got about 20,000 people on the payroll to say no. So I used to get so frustrated. I said, look, I want to talk to the guy who says yes. I want to talk to him, because I'm the only guy in my company that can say yes. So we got to get 2 yes guys together. You know? But I could never get them on the phone. I could get most of these big top executives would have a guy, like say your age, in their office, you know, their man Friday, basically, you know. And I got friendly with all these guys. Mike Medavoy's guy, Alan Ladd Jr.'s guy. His name is Mike Gilstein or something, I forget. He was the one who was relating the information to me about Alan Ladd Jr.'s response to the film. I mean, they loved the movie. And Laddie wanted to take it out of 1,000 prints. Now, if I had made a deal with MGM, I came so close to making a deal with MGM, you know. But as a friend of mine used to say, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.